Welcome to Habitly Courses, a production of Manage to Win. Each course is divided into multiple lessons for easy viewing. All are now completely free, so you can watch them on your own or work through them as a team. Please subscribe to this channel, leave a comment, and share your favorite lessons with others. Try to find something that helps you be your best.
Hello, this is David Russell. I'm back. This is lesson 2. We're talking about Communications 101, some basics about verbal and written communication. Here's lesson 2. Lesson 1, we talked about listening. That's great. Now we want to talk about barriers to effective communication. I'm going to run through this relatively quickly. First of all, there can be some physical barriers that we need to be aware of when we're communicating. You ever tried to talk with someone with the roar of a freeway nearby? Okay. Or loud music. I mean, you need to be aware of these things. Or if they're far away, right? Space. Now, some people want to get up and talk really close to you, right in your face. That's culturally often something a French person might be comfortable with, okay, just in speaking in generalities, but comparing to a British person, they'd rather be about 4 feet away or more. So what is that space limitation where the other person is comfortable? Don't think of yourself first. We're trying to accommodate or create communication that's effective with another person. So we think of their preferred style, try to adapt. We need to be aware, too, that certain people have psychological issues when it comes to communication. How they were raised, how they were treated, what their life experience is going to affect how well they can interact with others. It goes beyond just being an extrovert or an introvert. So let's talk about body language from a negative standpoint to get that out of the way. If you're talking with someone and they're slouching in the chair, do they really seem like they're interested in what you're saying? I don't think so. If you're talking with them and while you're talking, they look at the ceiling or just away, or they roll their eyes or drum their fingers, what about if they wince or tighten the mouth with impatience? What if they go to sleep? I don't think I've ever had that happen. But, well, actually, in some of my talks, when I go and talk at events, I'll have a session right after lunch. And I'll have an audience and 90, 95, 99% of them are fully engaged. But occasionally I'll get somebody, doesn't matter what I'm saying, if I'm not calling on them specifically, they're yawning or they are, I don't know whether I've had somebody go to sleep, but anyway. Or if somebody exhales deeply, you say, hey, blah, 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 and they go, well, that doesn't come across as a positive. All right, let's talk about the positives. First of all, you want to lower yourself physically to their level if you are taller than them. Not an issue if you're shorter, okay? But if you're seated, I'm not talking about hunching over if you're standing up, but if you are standing up, and they're shorter than you, don't stretch yourself so you're even taller. Try to be somewhat equivalent physically to their level. Your chin should be at a horizontal level, shouldn't be down. And it shouldn't be up like your nose is in the air like a snob, okay? You want to make eye contact, but not for too long. You don't want to, make them weird them out, It's like, ooh, guy's staring at me. Don't frown. If you naturally frown, focus on building a habit of having a neutral look to your mouth or a smile. And if you're sitting, lean forward a little bit. It shows that you're engaged, you're interested, okay? Let's talk about basics. I want to walk you through several screens here that are all basics. What is communication? Well, communication is the process of exchanging ideas, information, and feelings between two or more people. Okay? Some people talk to themselves. Some people argue with themselves. Some people lose those arguments. That's another story. But what we're talking about is communication with other people. Now, effective communication for our purposes is clear, accurate, and honest at all times. You can decide how candid you want to be, in other words, how much you want to reveal, but avoid the phrase, well, to be honest, because that indicates that at some point earlier you were not honest or less than honest. So if that's your habit, Stop saying, well, to be honest, and instead say, well, to be candid, because that's a much better approach. And that's a Zig Ziglar thing, by the way. That's not mine. Effective communication also gives the other person what they need to know. It's not just pontificating on something you feel is important and they have no interest. And third but not least, last but not least, it's understood by the person with whom you're communicating. If you're talking and they don't understand you, that's not going to help much. Okay, so there's basically 5 parts to effective communication. There's a sender who's got the source of information, and that can, go back and forth as you're having a conversation. There's the receiver who must understand what is being said to act on it. Number 3, there's the message. And by the way, it's often emphasized by emotions, who we talked about in the earlier lesson 1 on listening. Try to discern that emotion. Number 4, there's the method. How are you communicating? Audibly, in writing, in person, remote? What is the method? Text, instant messaging, email, whatever it might be. And 5, last but not least again, response. Okay? So ideally, you confirm the receipt of the information in the interaction, maybe next steps, that type of thing. But these are some basics, 5 parts to communication, one way to look at it. Communication fundamentals. Well, if we want to be an effective communicator, we have to stay focused on our purpose to inform, influence, or direct the other party or other parties. So number 2, we've got to speak at a pace that they prefer versus maybe our pace. I have a tendency to talk fast. I am sorry. It reminds me, I got to slow down. Number 3, avoid using fillers. Well, I had a boss once, and his filler was, and everything else. One time he was leading a meeting. It was an hour-long meeting, and I just was bored, so I was counting. And he said, and everything else, 57 times in one 1-hour meeting. That's too much, okay? When we're communicating, when we're talking audibly, you don't talk while you're eating or drinking. You don't talk with fluid in your mouth or food in your mouth. I was raised that way. Amazing number of people don't understand that now. Number 5, if you're in a conversation with someone and you need to yawn, that's okay, but cover your mouth. It is amazing to me. Probably 70 to 80% of people now that I interact with face-to-face were never taught basic business etiquette, actually etiquette in general, that when you yawn, you cover and you're with other people, you cover your mouth. I don't want to see your teeth or your tonsils or whatever. And by the way, usually yawning is not your best image that you want remembered. So cover your mouth when you yawn. And number 6, when you're initiating a conversation or in a conversation, start and end on time. Very important. Okay? Don't go on forever. Basics. How do you confirm? Well, we talked about active listening skills in lesson 1, and you want to use active listening skills to confirm your audience understands your message. So even though you might be doing the talking primarily, you still can use active listening skills to go back and hammer on key points and confirm they understand. You can also use those active listening skills, in my point number 2, to confirm you're comprehending their feedback, their concerns, and their conclusions. When we communicate, be patient, be respectful. If you can't be patient and respectful, take a break. You need to adjust your expectations of the other party. Maybe your expectations are way too high, or maybe you're not communicating effectively. Try to take a break, come back to it with different expectations and possibly a different approach. And critical, follow up as promised. When I first started doing my consulting, which I have been doing consulting primarily with managed service providers for the last 10 years of my 43 years of business experience. And the first 5 years, people will say, well, Dave, what are the primary problems you find with leaders? What are the biggest mistakes they make? I say, well, number one, they don't set clear, measurable objectives. And number two, they don't follow up as promised. And it's actually better to follow up and not set the clear, measurable objectives. Because if you set clear, measurable objectives, you have defined an expectation. You've said, you can count on me. I will follow up on this with you, whether you say that specifically or not. So following up is critical when it comes to communication and leadership. How can you self-evaluate, give yourself some self-accountability? Well, after you finish a conversation, it only takes a minute to think, okay, did I accomplish the purpose I was trying to achieve? Number two, could I have communicated differently with them? Were there some struggles there? Did they really get it? Did I get my point across well? And then, of course, the follow-up piece. Number three, if there's any follow-up, schedule the tasks that you've got to do, the accountability, any one-on-one, that type of thing. Self-improvement. We always want to be improving. It never ends throughout our lives. So next time you're going to go communicate with someone, particularly when it's important, get your thoughts organized in advance, but you want to get to the point, all right? Figure out how they like to receive information, and so you can get to that point in a way that resonates with them. Number two, you're going to use words and an approach that your audience understands and appreciates. If you need to, number three, rehearse. And you're rehearsing not because you don't know the information necessarily, but to improve your articulation. It's harder work to get something across in less words than it is to talk in a lot of words. That's a common thing in writing. It's much harder to write something short that gets your point across than it is to write something long that tries to get the same point across. But the short way is much more effective. If you are rehearsing, you can record your communication, okay, while you're rehearsing, or when you have the actual communication, if you want, you can ask the other party, I'm trying to make sure I'm communicating this well. Would you mind if I record it? Then listen to the recording. Listen, are there weaknesses to correct, strengths to expand? By the way, always play to the strengths. Weaknesses you want to improve to a competitive level, but you don't try to make a weakness a strength. The strengths you want to expand on. And as you're planning, anticipate questions, objectives, maybe support issues, whatever it might be. Okay? Inter-office communication etiquette, whether you are in cubicle land or in separate offices. Number one, no yelling across cubicles. Why? Well, you just disturbed everybody else in cubicle land. Number two, when you come up to speak with someone in a shared office, take note of whether the other person in that shared office, so you're going to go see Bob, and Bob shares an office with Tony. Okay, when you want to go see Bob, is Tony on the phone? If Tony's on the phone, then ask Bob to step outside and talk with you outside the office. All right, be thoughtful. Number three, apologize when you bump into someone. You're all rushing around the office. You bump into somebody. Don't just keep going. Apologize. That was partially your fault. Number four, do not exclude team members from conversations. Starting to sound like gossip, isn't it? But why are we playing favorites? So you're on a team, work as a team. Number five, you only take photos of people after you get their permission. Whether that's verbal or in writing, you got to figure out what is appropriate. But you don't go taking photos of people and then doing anything with them without their permission. And number six, do not send long emails or leave long voicemails. Go talk to the person. Just go talk to them. That's what we're talking about, communication. Okay, so this is the conclusion of lesson 2. We talked about just some of the key barriers, body language, and basics of communication to build on the importance of listening that we had in lesson 1. And I encourage you to think about some things that are happening now or what have happened in the past, and try to apply some of the points I've made and say, well, what would have happened if I had done this or that? And think about that. Answer these 5 questions. Look through the deck, listen to this, watch this training again, take the exam, pass the exam, and then go on to lesson 3. I'm sure there's something here that you can apply to develop a new habit that will help you enjoy your work more. Bye-bye for now. I'll talk to you at lesson 3.